let's talk about the Apple tax. So when people refer to Apple computers and their pricing, the first thing that they normally say is, oh, that's that darn Apple tax. Well, I wanted to break that down and see just how much of an Apple tax actually exists. Are people full of it? Is the Apple tax actually worth it? Does the value of what Apple supplies for free negate the price that it actually costs on top and extra on the computer? We'll talk about all of that and everything you ever would want to know about anything ever also in this video. Before I get started though, I want to thank everybody who's subscribed in the last week. It's been crazy. Thank you so much for all the support. If you want to learn ways of saving money when buying new tech or just talking about relative price to performance when it comes to new technology or old technology, hit subscribe. That's what we're all about here, trying to save money when it comes to buying tech, because tech is fun to buy and the more money you can save, the more tech you can buy. So let's take a dive into what I believe is Apple's best price to performance computer that they offer, the iMac 5K. And I decided to do the iMac 5K that's fully spec'd but has the least amount of RAM. That iMac 5K comes with a gorgeous DCIe P3 color gambit display, 5K of course, just millions and millions of pixels, enough pixels to make your pants pop off. That's alliteration right there. It also comes with a locked but overclockable CPU, the i7-7700K, and it also comes with an RX 580 8GB variant. Comes with some I/O, Thunderbolt 3, you can get that included, 8GB of RAM running at 2400 megahertz, and a power supply. That's pretty much all that's included, along with speakers. You get the keyboard, you also get like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. That's all factored into this, and a case technically. So that's all factored into all of this price and to performance ratio. So to start our theoretical Apple iMac build, we are going to go with the CPU. We bought an i7-7700K. Well, we didn't buy it, but we're adding it into the build. I chose that CPU because that's the exact same CPU that Apple puts inside of their iMacs. Next, I included a non-overclockable motherboard, and it had to have 4 DIMM slots, but there's a little drawback to that. So the reason I chose a non-overclockable motherboard is because Apple's computer doesn't overclock. It just turbo boosts. So there is no extra little headroom you could get because that cooler couldn't even supply cooling ability to that CPU that's inside of it now, let alone overclocking it. So I did choose a non-overclockable B250 motherboard. It's by ASUS. It's an ASUS Prime B250M, and it's fine. It's just a run-of-the-mill motherboard, MATX, so it fills all the requirements, 4 DIMM slots, although it's not SODIMM, but I don't think you could even get a motherboard that's in the desktop that uses SODIMM RAM, or I don't know why you would want to do that. So if you were to build this exact computer, and I don't really suggest it due to some of the price performance variables and where the bottlenecks are in this computer, I wouldn't totally suggest building this one, but if you were to do that, get a Z board, get a Z270 or a Z170 with the BIOS flash, because there's no point getting a 7700K, an unlocked processor, and not really being able to overclock it, even if you don't want to overclock it now, just to have the headroom and just to have a better board overall. Personally, that's what I would get, but that's on me. You choose whatever you want to choose, so that is why I went with that B250 motherboard. Next, we have the RAM. I just went with Corsair Vengeance DDR4 RAM, 2 4GB sticks. That's exactly what Apple includes, so I figured I would keep it even on that side. Not 1 8GB sticks or 4 2GB sticks. So DDR4 running at 2400 megahertz. And next, and I think one of the funniest things, is the cooler that I chose for the CPU. This thing is an absolute joke. The name is ridiculous. I have to look it up. So the reason I chose this exact one was because it had bad reviews. It's like $20. It probably can't cool anything, but that's kind of what the iMac uses. It uses a cooler that can't really cool the processor that well. That's why Macs are always thermal throttling. So I chose a crappy CPU cooler. And the name is hilarious. It's a Zalman CNP S7000VAL -1-PWM CPU cooler. It is $929 with $8 shipping. And in regards to that motherboard, the only thing that isn't the exact same between that and the iMac is Thunderbolt 3, but seeing as you have access to the actual motherboard and PCIe slots and the inside of the computer with SATA drives and stuff like that, you're not really losing out on too much there, so I figured it was a understandable price drop to try to match it on one part but not be able to match it on another part. And to emulate the 2TB Fusion drive, I had a 128GB NVMe SSD from Samsung and then a 2TB Western Digital Blue hard drive. I figured that was the best way to do it. Maybe there's a different way. I don't know if they sell Fusion drives, and honestly, buying a Fusion drive is just stupid in my opinion. I'd rather just get an SSD and then just have external storage, because I'd rather have fast internal storage and then just add storage later. Personally, that's just my preference, but obviously you could choose whatever you want. I figured this was pretty close. I imagine 128GB is probably a little bit more than what's on that Fusion drive, but I wanted to get as close as I could, obviously. So that's the best I could do. Next, we had an MSI Radeon RX 588GB version. Again, a little bit unfair towards the PC because this has its own cooling, and it won't accurately represent the iMac because the iMac does not have nearly as good as cooling as that GPU has. But we have to include it, and there's no real way to make that as bad as the iMac would. Maybe just taking off one of the fans would make it fair, but that would be a theoretical way to do it. I'm not building this computer, but we're just calculating the Apple tax. I went with a Supernova 550 fully modular power supply at 80 plus gold rated. The reason I went with that is because I know Apple wouldn't have a power supply that supplied way more power than the computer needed. And at max TDP, this computer only drew, I believe, 358 watts of power. So I know Apple wouldn't include like a 700 watt PSU inside of their computer, but they do include PSU, so you have to calculate that in. So I threw in this PSU. I figured fully modular, you got to try to keep it just like an iMac would be, where it's, looks good. So a fully modular one should look a little bit better because there's not going to be unnecessary cables, and in the iMac there wouldn't be unnecessary cables. So this one is, I don't know if I should include this price or not, but I decided to include the price of Windows 10. I know it's kind of silly to include that, but technically on a Mac you do get macOS. That's part of the Apple tax, is macOS. So I thought I should just include it, so I did. I'm not sure if it's necessary to include the full price, like $100 for Windows 10. I know you can buy it cheaper or just use it for free, but in this case I included it, and I don't know if it was the best decision to, but I think it didn't really make a difference, to be honest. The case is the NZXT H500. I think it looks cool, and iMacs look good, so I figured I'd pick a nice looking case. For the last couple of things, I added just a Logitech wireless keyboard and MX Master because that's a really good mouse, and I figured the Magic Mouse works really well with macOS, so I wanted to add in a good mouse. And then I added in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. It's the same exact Wi-Fi, 802.11a/b/g/n Wi-Fi, and then Bluetooth 4.0. It's all on the same card, and that is PCIe based, and that was $30. I also included a 10-watt speaker because after doing a little bit of research, I found that the speakers inside of the iMac are actually 5 watts each, so I just got a 10-watt speaker. It's like $29 or something. And then finally, the hardest thing for me to choose was the monitor. So the Mac monitor is a 5K monitor. Those are pretty much not available. You can buy one of them or maybe two of them, but they're fairly hard to find. So I figured 4K is just going to have to do. But unfortunately, the way Apple makes their monitors is they use a DCIe P3 wide color gamut monitor. And essentially what that means is it's really good for videographers. DCIe stands for Digital Cinema Initiative. So it's built for video editors. It's not really built for pretty much anybody else. So you have to choose a monitor that's the exact same. I couldn't find a monitor that had the same brightness or obviously the resolution. This monitor has 400 nits of brightness. It's a 4K monitor from Dell. It's on the DCIe P3 wide color gambit spectrum, so I figured this is the best one to go with. The monitor I chose was the Dell UP3216Q 31.5 inch 60Hz 4K monitor. Obviously, this is tough because not everyone needs that exact monitor with the DCIe P3 color gamut, but I had to make a choice, and this is what I decided to use. So that monitor was a ton of money. You'll see the running total on the screen, and at the end of the day, the total cost of this computer is a lot of money. It's $2,110. Obviously, this is a horrible waste of money, and if you build this exact computer, you're a little bit foolish, but this is the exact computer that Apple sells, pretty much almost down to the last little inch, or at least that you could buy. So it's $2,110. That's a lot of money, right? Well, no, not compared to the iMac that has these exact same specs. That costs a whopping $2,500. So we can do a quick little number crunch here, and that is a $390 upcharge. Keeping in mind you gain Thunderbolt and 5K, I would say the 5K screen it doesn't add too much in terms of price, because I had to buy exact specific parts. I had to buy a monitor that conforms to the DCIe P3 color gamut, and honestly, you don't need to do that, so I don't think that there is any extra money I need to add on. Thunderbolt, I would say, possibly, but since you have access to the inside of the computer, I don't see a need to add in the price of Thunderbolt. So at the end of the day, you can do the math, and when you look at the percentage increase from the computer that we built to the computer that Apple builds, you're looking at a $390 upcharge. When you do the math, that is an 18.5% upcharge. The Apple tax is 18.5%. Not that bad, right? You would have thought it's a little bit more. It actually is, but again, I chose a computer that I thought had the best price to performance. Obviously, not everyone would choose these exact specs or these exact pieces and parts. They would add in different ones, maybe a smaller hard drive or a way different monitor that's much cheaper. But this is what Apple gives you, so this is what you're looking at. So we're looking at about 19% of an Apple upcharge. So is there an excuse for that 19%? Maybe. So let's look at what you get. You get the operating system for free. Obviously on Windows, you can get it for free, but we paid for it. I counted it into the cost. If we don't count it into the cost, we're looking at closer to 20% of an Apple upcharge. So if you take that out, it's 20% Apple upcharge. If you leave it in, it's an 18 to 19% Apple upcharge. So you get macOS for free, and you get constant updates, and you get support for a while. That's one of them. You also get Pages, Keynote, and all of those apps that Apple supplies for free, like iMovie and even GarageBand. You get these apps that are actually relatively useful for free. And when looking at the competitor, I would say there is not really too much competition from iMovie's perspective. I know there are free film editing apps on the Windows side, but none that have the usefulness, in my opinion, of iMovie. So there is that little upcharge for iMovie. Personally, I don't edit music, so I'm not sure if GarageBand is a great music editing app or if it's a poor music editing app, but I know that there are free music editing apps available on Windows, so I can't really say confidently that GarageBand is worth it. So you get the free apps Apple supplies. Again, with Google Docs and Google Drive, you kind of already get those on Windows too, so I can't really say that that's a good reason for an upcharge. Next is the classes that Apple supplies. And now Windows has nothing like this, although you do have access to YouTube, so I'm sure you can pretty much learn everything that Apple teaches you at those courses on YouTube. But it is something, so you can make a little bit of a case that eats into the Apple upcharge, the Apple tax, but I still can't make that great of an excuse for it because they're teaching you how to use Apple-based apps. You don't walk in there and they go, oh, this is how you use Premiere Pro efficiently. It's like, this is how you use Final Cut Pro. And that's not useful to everybody that uses a Mac, and that's not useful to everybody. So I can't really agree with that. And finally, the last thing would be support. If your iMac is broken, your MacBook, iPad, iPhone, whatever it is, you can walk into an Apple store, walk up to the back, go to the geniuses and go, fix my damn phone. And they will pretty much be able to do it no matter how old it is. There's a point when they stop supporting them. I know that some people say it's a little bit too short, but keep in mind they do support products for around 7 years. So you could make a case that that is viable. I had a MacBook Air that I bought locally used. I didn't buy it new, and they still serviced me, so you always have that Apple store near you, that Apple support. And when you build a computer, you don't always have that support near you. So what do you think? Do you think the Apple tax is justified? Personally, I don't think it is. But I understand where they're coming from and why they have to charge a little bit more. And keeping in mind, you do get a few other benefits like design and build quality and stuff like that. But you also lose some things like the CPUs run a little bit hot. If something breaks inside of an iMac like the CPU or the logic board or the GPU goes bad, you have to replace the whole board. So if the GPU went bad in this computer, you would spend another $200, and if the GPU went bad in an iMac, you'd probably be spending over $1,000. So keep that in mind. There are pros and cons. Personally, I don't think it's justified. What do you think? If you like the video, hit subscribe, hit that like button, and honestly, tell your friends and family, because I don't know why we're not at 500 yet. I mean, like, I'm a big time YouTuber now, so now I got my Ray-Bans on, my custom ones with the rubber band. So like, what are we doing? Okay, like what is going on? Why are we not at 500? Seriously, guys, thank you so much. Like, I think it's 468 at the time of filming this video. I'm sure it'll be more. You guys keep coming. It's awesome. Hopefully we can build a little community here. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts, opinions. I just love responding. Talk to each other. Be nice. Be mean. I don't really care. All right. See you guys in the next one. Peace out.